Well, joining me now is the Conservative MP Henry Smith. His constituency includes Gatwick Airport. Welcome to you, Mr. Smith. What do you think of the introduction of this 14-day quarantine for people coming into the UK?
Well, I think it's well-intentioned, but I think it's misguided. If we were to have had a quarantine, it probably should have been at the beginning of the COVID-19 restrictions, not as Europe and the rest of the world starts to open up again. I think what this will only serve to do is actually create further uncertainty for the recovery of the aviation and travel industries, and will do questionable public health benefits. This wasn't even approved, I understand, by the SAGE committee. So I do think, as I say, well-intentioned but very misguided.
But also some question as to whether it's going to be properly enforced.
Well, there are some absurdities around it. First of all, as your report was saying, the ability to be able to follow up on those to check if they are self-isolating and quarantining is very questionable indeed. Secondly, there are some backdoor routes into the country, so you could fly to Dublin and then on to London and not be subject to the quarantine measures at all. And then also, in the context of Gatwick Airport in my constituency, they have in one of their car parks one of the country's largest COVID-19 testing facilities. So why not have a situation where passengers are tested coming in and then they could be clear? So there are other ways around that. The idea of air corridors, air bridges to other countries with the like coronavirus experience, so that at least some of the summer travel season can be salvaged, and jobs as well.
I mean, presumably you've made representations to ministers about this. What have they said to you?
Well, in the House of Commons last Wednesday, I questioned the Home Secretary on this. Obviously, the government are determined to go ahead. The quarantine came in earlier today. I think where we are best placed is getting a very early review of this, and the government said that they would review it after 3 weeks. So perhaps we could have these measures dropped by the beginning of July. And also, I would urge the government to get on with discussing the issue of air corridors with other countries as well. I think that is a big solution, as well as a common set of travel standards in terms of testing and hygiene and distancing where possible to be brought in, so that the importance of aviation and travel to the economy, we are an island global trading nation after all, isn't lost throughout its peak season.
Why do you think the government introduced this, given such widespread criticism? Of course, we've got the airline industry going to court today. Do you think it was a sort of face-saver after the Cummings affair?
Well, I don't know if it's linked to the Dominic Cummings situation, but I think it was an idea that sounded good, but actually has been implemented at the wrong time. So I think there is perhaps some face-saving in it going ahead, but the anomalies and the loopholes around it, I think, render it useless in terms of public health, but actually it's very damaging in terms of trying to get the economy going again.
And what about the impact on Gatwick Airport? During the pandemic, we've had British Airways saying it's going to stop flying from there. What do you think the long-term impact, looking over the next couple of years, is going to be on Gatwick? And of course, your constituents, many of whom are employed there or depend on it.
Well, the short-term impact is devastating. I was talking to the chief executive of Gatwick Airport recently, and he was telling me that several weeks ago there was one day when only 23 passengers came through the airport. That's sort of less than half a Airbus A320 coming through. And when you consider in normal times it is the world's busiest single runway airport, it really quite tells you something. One of the other things I questioned the Prime Minister on last week at PMQs was extending the idea of extending the furlough, the coronavirus job retention scheme, specifically for sectors of the economy like aviation, because just as the rest of the country and the rest of the world will be fully unlocking, aviation and travel then goes into its low season through the winter, so we'll need extra support. So it is devastating. We've heard BA, Virgin Atlantic, EasyJet, Norwegian talk about significant job losses. That's inevitable because of the coronavirus pandemic in the short term, but it needn't be inevitable in the medium to long term if there is, I would argue, more targeted intervention.
How many jobs have been lost and how many have been furloughed?
I don't have exact numbers. It's complex. It depends whether you're talking about Gatwick Airport itself, or whether you're talking about an airline like Virgin or British Airways. But it is significant. The Crawley economy has diversified significantly in the last 10, 20 years, but is still heavily reliant because of Gatwick Airport on the aviation industry. So this is an issue that is vital for my local community. But again, I would argue for the nation as a whole. We are an island trading nation. We have those global links. We rely on that connectivity, and therefore it's the effects on aviation, the negative effects, will be felt throughout the wider economy.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Smith, for